Jin Woo Kim despised mess, and children were the very definition of chaos. His Atlanta estate, a glass and steel fortress presiding over the city, was ruled by a cold, Spartan order. No stains, no sound, no sentiment. At 35, he was the Dumok, boss, of the burgeoning Jopok network in Georgia, a man whose ruthlessness was legendary and whose intense, dark eyes could paralyze a rival crew. Yet, there was a quiet disruption to his immaculate world. Amara Jones, his newest housekeeper. She was a silent force, a shadow of rich brown skin and tightly coiled braids, who cleaned his clutter with painful efficiency. Amara possessed a steady composure that intrigued him, a deep resilience etched in the exhaustion beneath her expressive eyes. Jinwoo knew only that she was a single mother, and that simple fact was a warning of vulnerability. He paid her generously to ensure compliance, but his profound distaste for any form of dependency was why he had insisted on one ironclad rule. Her children, under no circumstances, were allowed near his property. That rule, he would soon discover, was the one law even the great Dumok of Atlanta could not enforce. Jinwoo's law could bend the entire city, but it did not apply to hunger. Jinwoo's kitchen was a shrine to opulence, larger than Amara's entire two-bedroom apartment. It was a monument to excess, with marble counters stacked with exotic fruits and commercial equipment she didn't even know how to operate. She usually cleaned it after his private chef had left, the lingering scent of galbi and truffles hanging heavy in the humid southern air. Tonight, her heart hammered against her ribs as the clock ticked past midnight. She'd stayed late to clean up a spill in the boss's study, and her nerves were frayed, her stomach hollow. She thought of her children, 7-year-old Nia and 4-year-old Malik, huddled in their beds pretending not to notice the lack of dinner. Childcare costs had swallowed the grocery money. Shame was a tight, cold fist in her gut, but the primal need of a mother for her young was stronger. Her exhaustion was a mask, her pride a brittle shield. She only needed scraps, a few forgotten crusts of his artisan bread, maybe some leftover slices of prosciutto, or a small carton of the expensive, untouched yogurt. Not for herself, for Nia, who was growing fast and often complained of a perpetual ache in her stomach, and for Malik, whose persistent cough due to the damp apartment seemed to deepen with every skipped meal. Amara, a woman of deep faith and unshakable pride, moved like a thief. Her calloused hands, accustomed to scrubbing the floors of the wealthy, reached into a refrigerated drawer. She quickly pulled out 3 untouched brioche rolls and a handful of sliced deli turkey, shoving them into a plastic shopping bag she kept tucked in her cleaning apron. "What do you think you're doing?" The voice was a low, controlled growl, yet it carried the weight of a firing squad. Amara froze, the air escaping her lungs in a shaky gasp. The plastic bag slipped from her grip, and the brioche rolls hit the marble floor with a pathetic thud. She turned slowly, her face already hot with mortification. Jinwoo Kim stood framed in the kitchen entrance. He hadn't walked in, he had simply materialized. His dark, intense eyes tracked her every movement, the coldness in them more chilling than the refrigerator she'd just robbed. He was dressed in a pristine silk shirt, unbuttoned just enough to reveal the sharp lines of his collarbones, and the distinct tiger, Ho-Rang-I tattoo in black ink on the left side of his neck, an emblem of dangerous elegance. "Boss Kim," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. The tension was a physical pressure against her chest. She fought to straighten her spine, salvage what little dignity she had left. I apologize. I'll put it back right away." His lip curled in an expression that wasn't quite a smile, but definitely a judgment. "Right away, and then what? You go home to your known address, only to do the same thing tomorrow? Theft, Ms. Jones, is not a profession I condone, especially not on my territory." "I'm not stealing to live," she managed, her voice gaining a surprising tremor of strength despite her terror. "I'm stealing to eat. It's different. It's a distinction only the desperate make." He took a slow step forward, and she didn't flinch, a fact that seemed to genuinely surprise him. He was accustomed to people shrinking away from his power. "It's a breach of trust. I could have you gone. No reference, nothing. You're fired." The blow was sharper than a physical strike. "Please, Boss Kim," she pleaded, her voice cracking. "I beg you. I need this job. My children, they haven't eaten today. I wouldn't ask if—" The shame broke, and a single tear of despair tracked a path down her rich brown cheek. "They're little, I'm all they have." He watched the tear fall. His eyes, usually granite, reflected a flicker of Han, a deep, complex sense of loss or injustice. perhaps for his own difficult past or for the sheer ugliness of her desperation. "Your children," he stated, his tone unchanged. "I always knew you had children, and I explicitly told you, keep them away from here. Children bring emotion. And emotion brings weakness." "They are not weak," she countered, wiping the tear away with a trembling hand. "They are the strongest people I know. They are just hungry." His gaze locked onto the stolen food, then back to her. He began to slowly circle her, evaluating her not as a person, but as a compromised asset. "I don't deal with problems. I deal with control." He stopped in front of her, his proximity making her heart race. "You are inefficient in your employment if you are so desperate for 3 brioche rolls that you risk your salary. If I allow you to walk back onto the street, you'll be back to this in 2 days. That does not solve my control problem." Jinwoo pondered, his sharp jawline taut. The Jopok code valued loyalty, even if it had to be bought, and he had a violent aversion to loose ends. If she were caught by authorities, she might have something to tell. The slightest risk was unacceptable. "Here is my deal," he said, his voice low and laden with unspoken menace. "You steal from me. Now I will make you steal from yourself. To keep this job, you must be under my control. Total control." Amara felt her anxiety coil tight. "What do you mean?" "I mean your problem is logistics. You can't work and care for them and keep them fed, so I solve the logistics." He gestured toward the empty bag. "Go home. Bring your children back here by dawn." She stared at him, disbelief washing over her. "To the mansion? But you said—" "I said I did not want them here, and I do not. But if they are under my roof, they are not starving, and you are here. I see you. I control you. It is the only way to ensure you never break my rules out of desperation again." His gaze was calculating, not kind. "You will live in the staff quarters. You will clean. You will cook. In return, food and shelter for your children. No argument, no questions. And they must be silent." Amara Jones, the proud fighter, knew this was a devil's bargain, but she looked at her life, at her son's cough, and her daughter's hunger. What was her pride worth against their safety? "You are offering this to me," she said, hesitant. "I am demanding it," he corrected, his face impassive. "I am not doing charity, Miss Jones. I am securing an asset. You and your children are now an extension of my security system. If you cause trouble, if you make me look weak, you will regret more than your hunger." She felt the weight of his word, heavier than any weapon, but her back was against the wall. "All right, Boss Kim," she said, her voice a defeated whisper. "By dawn, we'll be here. But know this, they are not toys, and they are not silent." He merely nodded, his attention already drifting from her, back to his own impenetrable thoughts. "Go." Amara gathered the brioche rolls from the floor and left, her heart hammering. She had traded her freedom and her dignity for a cot and some food, and now she was going to sleep under the roof of a man who saw her only as a vulnerability. But when she reached her damp apartment and saw her children sleeping huddled together, she knew she had made the choice any mother would. Safety came first. At dawn, Amara returned, her children clinging to her hands. Nia, wide-eyed and terrified, and Malik, who hid behind his mother's legs. Jinwoo descended his glass staircase, wearing a perfectly tailored dark blazer. His gaze landed on the 2 children, tiny and vulnerable, in the center of his world. Nia looked up, and the fear in her eyes was pure. Jinwoo saw himself reflected in her. He recoiled. It wasn't disgust he felt. It was something far more dangerous, a sharp pang of responsibility. The presence of the children in the mansion was like a jarring, off-key note in a symphony of control. Jinwoo rarely saw them, but he felt them. He smelled the faint scent of coconut soap and baby lotion lingering in the air that had previously only smelled of oak and money. He spent his long working hours in his glass office, but his focus was fractured. Amara and her children were housed in a suite of guest rooms he barely used, far from his main quarters, but still less than 100 feet away. Her anxiety was a constant hum. She cleaned his apartment with renewed intensity, her life and her children's safety dependent on her discretion. She cooked for them secretly in the staff kitchen, but the chef had already noticed the inventory shift. The first true interaction came a week later. Jinwoo came downstairs for a late breakfast. The dining room, designed for high-stakes dinners, was empty save for him. However, the silence was shattered by a tiny cough from the hallway. Malik. The boy stood near the door, rubbing his sleepy eyes, his oversized pajamas slightly rumpled. Nia, already dressed in clean clothes Amara had laundered in the staff facility, tugged on her brother's hand, pulling him back. Amara was nowhere in sight. She would be cleaning the private gym on the other floor. Malik shrugged off his sister's hand and took a step. He looked up at Jinwoo, the scariest man he'd ever seen, holding a porcelain cup. The Korean Mafia boss, known for moving millions with a nod, felt strangely exposed. Malik held out his hand, not begging, but showing. Cupped in his sweaty palm was a crayon drawing. It was a smear of primary colors, featuring 2 tiny stick figures and 1 giant looming dark stick figure. "Mommy says that's you," Malik mumbled, his voice a shy whisper. "You're the tiger." The tiger. The Jopok moniker he hated. He stared at the drawing. The child had drawn an orange and black creature with angry whiskers. His eyes flicked to Jinwoo's neck. His tattooed Horang eye was a symbol of relentless force and protection. Jinwoo didn't know how to respond. He was used to threats and flattery, not innocence. He didn't like children. They were sticky, unpredictable, and loud. But this boy, Malik, saw him as a tiger. Before he could answer, Amara appeared, terror in her eyes. "Malik, Nia, inside. I told you to stay in the room." She rushed forward, her face burning, and scooped up the children. She offered a quick, clumsy bow, a movement he associated with Korean respect, which startled her. "Boss Kim, I am so sorry. This was my fault. I will punish them." "No," Jinwoo said, the sound rough in his throat. He put down the cup, and the porcelain did not break. He pointed to the drawing in the boy's hand. "What is this?" "It's a drawing." Amara's panic twisted into confusion. "He says I am a tiger." Amara swallowed hard. "Yes, he likes tigers. They're strong. Please, Boss Kim, don't hurt him. It was my fault." Jinwoo looked at the woman before him, her posture defensive, ready to absorb any blow for these small beings. She was a lioness. He felt a sharp pang of respect. "I do not harm children," he stated, though it was a lie. He harmed anything that got in his way. But to himself, he thought these were not in his way. They were in his house. He turned to Malik, who still watched him with a 4-year-old's gravity. "Tigers eat raw meat, boy. They are savage, not a pet." Malik didn't flinch, but they protect their cubs. The comment hit Jinwoo like a gut punch. He was known for his loyalty to his men, his Jopok family, but he had never considered his role in such a primal sense. He looked at Amara. "Do not punish him," he said. "Tell him that tigers appreciate art, even if it is bad." He reached for his wallet. This was not charity, it was compensation. He pulled out a crisp $100 bill and handed it to Nia, the eldest. "Buy supplies, not food. Food I will provide. Paint me a better tiger." Nia stared at the money, disbelief filling her big brown eyes. Amara was frozen. "We don't need your money, Boss Kim," Amara said, her voice shaking. "We can buy our pencils with my salary." "This is an order," he said, his voice snapping back to its steel-like tone. "Accept it. Consider it a silence bonus." Amara had no choice. She offered another deep, dignified nod. She took the children and retreated to their rooms. That afternoon, while Jinwoo was in an intense meeting with his Hyung Nims, older brothers, lieutenants, in the upstairs conference room, a security alarm blared. Not the perimeter alarm, but his personal inner gate system. His lieutenant, Haiwon, rushed in, her face pale. "Boss, it's Mr. Miller, the maid's ex-husband. He's trying to break through the service gate. He says he's taking the kids." Jinwoo's jaw tightened. He despised domestic drama. He despised problems. But this problem had just breached his territory. Blood boiled in him, a sudden cold fury. This man was attempting to trespass on his perimeter. "Do not let him pass the gate," Jinwoo commanded, his gaze lethal. "But he's causing a scene. He says Amara can't keep the children. He says his family will crush her." Jinwoo stood. He smoothed his shirt. He looked at his lieutenant. "A1, call security and tell them to hold him. I will handle it. He is on my land." He strode down the glass staircase, his contained anger a more dangerous threat than any shout. He exited through the service gate and found a burly man yelling obscenities into the intercom. "Give me back my kids. The bitch can't just hide 'em here." The contempt in the man's voice for Amara and her actions made Jinwoo's hand flare. He despised weakness, but he even more despised the bullies who exploited it. Jinwoo stopped 10 feet from the man. His bodyguard stepped forward, but Jinwoo held up a hand. He stared at the ex-husband, his face a mask of ice. "You are insulting one of my staff on my property," Jinwoo said, his voice as cold as a mountain peak. His Korean-American accent was heavy with authority. "And who are you, her perverted boss?" the man sneered. "I'm the father. She's withholding my kids. Jin-woo stared the man down, his eyes locked. He took out his phone and snapped a quick picture of the man's license plate. "You have no jurisdiction here. I am the jurisdiction." He took a step forward, and the ex-husband finally saw the tiger on Jin-woo's neck, the badge of silent violence. His eyes widened. "You will retreat now, and I assure you, if you ever bother Ms. Jones or the children, or step onto my property again, I will ensure that you and your entire bloodline regret the day you were born." The man stammered, his bravado crumbling. The threat was real. Jin-woo's security detail closed in. Jin-woo watched the man being led away, fear replacing arrogance. He turned back to the mansion where Amara watched from the window, her children hidden behind her. His fury receded, replaced by something deeper and possessive. He was protecting something of his own. "She and the children are now a part of my life. No one touches them," he murmured to Hae-won in Korean, his voice a solemn vow. He ascended the glass stairs, his focus entirely fixed on the woman who had witnessed his weakness and his strength. The aftermath of Jin-woo's intervention changed the air in the mansion. Amara was no longer just cleaning, she was being guarded. Her initial fear had morphed into a cautious suspicion, now coupled with a budding, dangerous sense of security. She felt trapped, but finally safe. The outside world, represented by her ex-husband, had retreated into the haze. The Korean boss, for his part, was fighting an internal war. He still spent his days managing his Jopok empire, but his nights were now filled with faint domestic sounds. Malik giggling at a cartoon, Nia quietly asking for help with a math problem. He didn't intervene, but he also didn't demand Amara silence them. He simply listened. One afternoon, Amara was cleaning his small safe room. He had forbidden her from touching any documents, but the safe itself needed vacuuming. Her eyes snagged on a small folded piece of paper that had slipped out, a list of expenses. It was not a normal list. It was a record of old medical bills, and the name on the receipt was Kim Hae-jin, his younger sister, who had tragically died from an illness when he was young. A sharp pang of sympathy, the first, struck Amara. She realized his aversion to weakness wasn't true coldness, but the fear of losing what was vulnerable. Later, Amara was in the staff kitchen, preparing what she called emergency comfort dinner. Southern green beans seasoned with smoked turkey and jalapeno cornbread. The scent, rich and savory, wafted through the ventilation. Jin-woo came downstairs, his brow furrowed. "What is that smell?" he asked, his tone demanding control. "It's green beans, Boss Kim. It's soul food, stuff that grows down south." He raised an eyebrow. "I do not eat stuff that grows. I eat samgyeopsal." "I know what you eat," Amara shot back, stirring a pot of beans. "And you need more than pork fat and soju to fuel a tiger. Your charges need something substantial. They need soul." He stopped at the threshold, his arms crossed over his muscled chest. "Do not call your dishes soul food in my territory." "Why? Are you afraid it'll give you one?" she challenged, her defensive posture giving way to defiance. She was a woman of fierce pride. He had given her safety, but she would not give him her spirit. He offered a slow, unnerving half-smile. He stepped closer to the counter, his shadow falling over her. "I am afraid of nothing, Ms. Jones, except losing control. And you are an unacceptable risk to my control." He picked up a spoon and tasted the green beans. His dark eyes locked on hers, his gaze piercing. He said nothing, but his expression softened a fraction. "It is salty, but it has flavor," he admitted. The word flavor almost an insult. "Thank you," Amara replied dryly. "It's the best compliment I've ever received." Her eyes drifted to the tattoo on his neck. For the first time, she reached out a hand, hesitant, and touched it. The brush was light, yet charged. His skin was warm and smooth beneath her fingertip. "Why the tiger?" she whispered. "It's beautiful, but so fierce." His entire body stiffened. No one had touched him, much less his mark, in years. His pulse quickened. "It is to remember that the only way to survive is to be the predator, not the prey," he answered, his voice lower than usual. "I am prey," Amara said, withdrawing her hand, heat rushing to her face. "And you protected me. That doesn't make you a predator. That makes you a protector." He pulled away, the moment of vulnerability stinging. He had no counter to her logic. She was humanizing him, and he hated it. That evening, the external threat finally showed its teeth. Jin-woo was sipping soju and trying to ignore the laughter filtering up from the staff quarters when Hae-won, his lieutenant, burst into his office. "Boss, news from New York. The Japanese clan, the Yakuza, they found a leak in the system. They know you have Ms. Jones and the children here. Jinwoo's face hardened into a lethal mask. How? The ex-husband. He has old connections. He sold the information that your weakness is a black woman and her children. They say it is a disgrace to the Jopok, and proof that you have gone soft, American. They say if you do not surrender them, they will strike. Jinwoo's head pounded. His life was control, and now the entire underworld knew of his blind spot. He didn't hate children. He hated what they did to his power. Where are Amara and the children? He asked, his voice a low thunder. In the room. They are sleeping. Jinwoo grabbed his blazer, his face cold. Prepare security. No one else needs to know this. If they think I am weak, I will show them what an American Korean tiger does when his cubs are threatened. He had to get them out. He had to protect them. But his fury wasn't just protection, it was possessiveness. They were his now, part of his territory. Amara was being woken by a terrified Naya. "Mommy, there are big men outside, with guns." Amara sat up. She felt no fear. She felt a cold anger. She ran to the window and saw Jinwoo's men arming themselves. The door burst open. Jinwoo stood there, dressed in black, his eyes blazing. He was there to save them, or to take them. "You and the children, now. To the bunker," he commanded, his voice leaving no room for negotiation. At that very instant, a Yakuza sniper sent a warning. A bullet tore through the living room window upstairs, shattering the grand crystal chandelier. The deafening sound broke the night's silence, and Amara knew her period of peace was over. War had come for them. The sound of shattering glass marked the end of the illusion. Amara grabbed her children, pulling them both beneath the heavy bed. Her body curved over theirs. Her strength was not that of a tiger, but that of a mother. Jinwoo stormed into the room, his body tense and coiled, a pistol in his hand. He wasn't yelling, he was operating in Dumok mode. He saw Amara protecting her young, and his respect for her spiked. She wasn't screaming, she was fighting. "Amara!" he shouted, his accent disappearing in the urgency. "Get out! Now!" She crawled out from under the bed, pulling Nia and Malik after her, the kids' eyes wide with terror. "I'm not leaving!" she yelled, her voice surprisingly steady. "I know this is because of me, Boss Kim. If they want me, I'll go, but don't put them in danger." He paused, his rage overwhelming the external threat. She was offering herself up for sacrifice. "Shut up. This isn't because of you. It's because of my control. And they touched what is mine." The word echoed heavy with Korean possessiveness. He grabbed Amara's arm, his grip steel, and hauled them across the floor toward the staircase leading to the secure basement. Haewon and his men formed a human shield, fighting off the initial attack. As they ran, Malik, overwhelmed by the noise, stumbled and fell. A sharp cry from Nia pierced the chaos. Jinwoo didn't hesitate. He released Amara, scooped up the boy, and tucked him against his chest, his trained hands shielding the small body. Malik clung to his shirt. He looked down at the child, then at Amara. For the first time, his dark eyes weren't empty. They were blazing. Protection was the most primal thing he had felt in years. He was willing to die for them. They reached the underground bunker. It was a soundproof, luxurious suite. Jinwoo threw the children onto the bed, and Amara tumbled in beside them. He slammed the steel door shut with a heavy thud. "I have to go out there," he said, already turning. "No." Amara grabbed his hand, her fingers clamping around his wrist. "You're bleeding." A shallow cut on his forearm was dripping blood onto the white marble floor. He hadn't even noticed. "It is nothing," he said, pulling his arm away. "It's everything," Amara countered, her voice an urgent whisper. "You go out there and you will die. Don't. Stay with us. You already saved us, now save yourself." He looked at her face, her natural beauty highlighted by fear, but her resolve stronger. She was begging him to live, to stay, not for her salvation, but for his. "If I stay here, they will come for us. They will burn the house to get us out. I have to be a predator, Amara, not a victim." "Be a protector, then," she challenged. "You don't have to kill them. You just have to stop them." Her word hit him. She was right. He could use his brain, not just his gun. He could give them what they wanted, but on his terms. He didn't have to hide. He had to assert. He looked down at Nia, who held out a small cartoon bandage from the drawer. Malik smiled. He felt the weight of his responsibility. He was fighting a war he had created. He ripped off his silk shirt. The blood from his arm was running down his shoulder. Amara gasped, not in fear, but in a sudden, sharp, physical awareness. She was looking at him, his muscled body, his intense strength. She grabbed a clean towel and stepped closer. "Let me clean it," she murmured. Her hand was warm and soft against his arm. Their proximity was electric. He smelled the faint scent of vanilla and laundry detergent. His control fractured. "You are trouble, Amara," he growled, his voice husky. "The biggest trouble I have ever had. You are making me feel things." "Good trouble or bad trouble?" she asked, her gaze fixed on the wound. "Dangerous trouble," he admitted. He leaned in, his eyes locked on her lips. His heart hammered in his chest. His breath met hers. He was fighting the impulse. A kiss interrupted by gunfire was something he couldn't risk. "I'm not leaving," Amara said, pulling back slightly. "Give me your gun. I'll stay and fight with you." He laughed, a rough, humorless sound. "You are insane, Ms. Jones. You are a woman of principle. I am a man of war. And I am your redemption," she stated. "I am the only person in this world who doesn't fear you or want your money. I only want you so my children can have a father." The word father hit him harder than any bullet. He had to protect her. He had to protect them, not with fear, but with his full power. "All right," Jinwoo said, his eyes turning to steel. "Stay here. Clean the wound. I will be back. And when I return," he declared, his voice a solemn vow, "this war is over, and you are my queen." He turned, his fury total and unrestrained. He opened the steel door to the bunker. "Haiwan, tell the Yakuza, the tiger is hungry. They did not touch my property. They touched my family. Now they will pay the debt. In blood." Jinwoo strode out into the night, his body filled with a protective rage he had never known. He was fighting for his life, his empire, and a woman and her children who had become his everything. Amara, leaning against the steel door, listened to the gunfire echo, her heart beating a frantic rhythm. She felt fear, but she knew that for the first time he was fighting not just for control, but for love. Morning arrived not with its usual peaceful order, but with the heavy silence of devastation. Shuttered windows, the smell of smoke, and the sound of quiet cleanup crews upstairs. Amara, Nia, and Malik emerged from the bunker. They found Jinwoo in the living room, covered in soot and dried blood that wasn't his own. He was slumped on his leather sofa, his elbow resting on his knee, exhausted but victorious. Haiwan and his men had controlled the situation. The Yakuza had been dispersed and neutralized. The threat had been eradicated. Amara rushed to him, not to judge, but to hold him. She ignored the blood, the danger. She held the man. "You're okay," she whispered, her voice tight. He gripped her, his strength breaking, his face buried in her box braids. "I'm okay, you're okay, they are okay," he repeated, his voice slightly ragged. His life was chaos, but they were his anchor. Nia and Malik hesitated. They didn't know how to react. They had seen the monster, the tiger. Jinwoo pulled Amara away and knelt down. He looked at Nia, her eyes still wide with fright. "I won't hurt you. This is not your world, it is mine, and I will keep it away from you." Malik ran forward and hugged Jinwoo's leg. "Thank you, Tiger," he said, his voice full of trust. Nia stepped forward. She didn't hug Jinwoo. She looked at him, at his tattooed neck. "Are you leaving now?" she asked, the fear of abandonment thick in her voice. "You saved us already. Are you going to run away like my other father?" Her question hit him in his core. His own father, the first Dumok, had emotionally abandoned him for his empire. He knew what it was to be left by a father. He looked at Amara, then at the children. He stood and pulled a small dark wooden box from the inner pocket of his blood-stained blazer. It wasn't a diamond ring. It was a traditional Korean bracelet, a jade and gold doljanchi given to children on their first birthday. But it had two, one small, one tiny. He handed Nia her bracelet. "This charm," he said, speaking more to Amara than to the child, "is to show that my Jong, my deep connection and loyalty is with you. I do not run, I build, and I protect." He looked at Amara. "Nia and Malik are a part of me now. They humanized me. They made me see that strength is not just control, but the willingness to protect what is vulnerable. I cannot live in a world where you and they are not safe." Amara felt tears stream down her face. She knew this wasn't a proposal. It was a declaration of war on his past and a vow for their future. "I love you, Jinwoo," she said, her voice a whisper. "I do, but I am not a queen who sits in a cage. I am a fighter. I will only be yours if I am your partner. I will not live in the staff quarters. I am the mother of these children. I am your counsel." "I know," he responded, his voice filled with reverence. "You are already running my house, and my heart." He held out his hand. "Amara Jones, stay with me, not as my maid, but as my family. as my wife, and I promise that for them I will clean up my world, not your dirt. I will give them a safe life. They will have both sides, your soul and my domain." Amara smiled, a blindingly bright smile of relief and love. She grasped his hand, her brown skin against his pale. "Yes, Jinwoo. Yes, I'll stay. But the kids are learning Korean and how to make soul food. They will learn galbi and respect," he replied, pulling her into an intense, chaste kiss that was more of a promise than a passion. Later that day, Jinwoo placed a video call to his traditional stern mother in Korea. "Mother," he said, speaking in Korean, "I have found my family. She is a strong woman, African-American, with 2 children. They are my weakness and my strength. I am bringing them home. Hyung." His mother did not respond with anger. She merely looked at the screen, at the exhausted pride in her son's eyes, and at the picture of Amara on his desk. She sighed, a deep, accepting sound. "The tiger has found his territory, Jinwoo. Protect them well. They are your blood now." He hung up. The weight of his legacy settled. He was still the Dumok, but his empire now included a 7-year-old girl who needed help with fractions, and a 4-year-old boy who saw him as a hero. Amara came into the room with Nia and Malik. Malik handed Jinwoo a new drawing. The tiger, now smiling, with 3 stick figures safely nestled underneath. Jinwoo picked up Malik. He looked at Amara, his tiger eyes soft and possessive. "Let's go see the city, Queen." "Our city." The family walked out onto the balcony, the Atlanta skyline stretching before them, a world Jinwoo once dominated with fear, but would now rule with love. 1 year later, the scent of roasting galbi mixed with the savory aroma of slow-cooked collard greens in the Kim mansion. The fusion wasn't just on the plates, it was in the air. Jinwoo was still the Dumok, but the lines of his control had shifted. He had streamlined his organization, focusing on legal enterprises, guided by Amara's practical mind. He was still dangerous, still the tiger, but his ruthlessness now served a singular purpose, maintaining the peace and prosperity of his new domain. He wore the tiger tattoo not as a threat, but as a badge of his primal commitment to his family. Amara was no longer the maid. She was Amara Kim, his trusted partner, the woman who commanded the respect of every Hyung-nim in the room simply by her presence. She ran a non-profit organization focused on single mothers in the inner city, a venture quietly funded by Jinwoo's now legitimate interests. Nia, now 8, was excelling in school, practicing her Korean with Jinwoo's mother over weekly video calls, and her laughter echoed through the mansion, a sound Jinwoo now welcomed. Malik, 5, still called Jinwoo Tiger Dad, and had insisted on Jinwoo teaching him the Korean martial art of Hapkido, much to Jinwoo's secret delight. On a warm Saturday afternoon, the family stood on the vast lawn. Nia and Malik were playing catch with a nervous but happy Jinwoo, teaching him the rules of an American football game he'd never understood. Amara watched them, leaning against the balcony railing, a gentle smile on her face. Jinwoo caught the ball, turning to look at her. He saw not a maid, but a black woman who had stared down his darkness and offered him the light of unconditional love and family. He raised his hand in a silent salute. He had traded his solitary kingdom for a life full of chaotic, beautiful noise. He wouldn't have it any other way. The tiger had finally found his home and his peace.